The first time Lieutenant Arden Kale saw the armor, he thought someone was playing a cruel joke. The racks in the hangar bay were lined with glossy carapaces of alien make, sleek exosuits seized from conquered arsenals, all curved plates and humming cores of energy. They shone like blades. Next to them, under a sputtering light, was the human prototype. It looked like someone had welded together a scrapyard's leftovers, dipped them in dull paint, and strapped a few coolant packs haphazardly along the back. The chest plate bulged in odd places, the visor was little more than a slit, and every joint groaned with the sound of worn hydraulics when the technicians tested it. Soldiers laughed behind their hands, whispering that it belonged in a museum beside medieval armor. Yet command was serious. Project Sentinel, they called it, though among the troops the name never stuck. To them it was simply the dumb armor. Arden, unlucky enough to draw assignment as one of its operators, kept staring at it in disbelief, waiting for someone to admit this was hazing. But no, the order was stamped and sealed. He was to wear it in combat. He ran a hand across the metal plates, expecting cold sterility. Instead, the armor radiated a strange warmth, as if it retained the heat of every sun it had been tested under. There were dense, already shallow impact craters that technicians hadn't bothered to polish out. The smell of oil and scorched circuitry clung to it. Arden frowned. "This thing looks like it survived a crash landing," he muttered. Sergeant Venn, who had been in the program longer, chuckled without humor. "Crash landing? More like 3. Don't let the looks fool you. Somehow it works. Don't ask me why. You'll find out soon enough." That was the strangest part, the rumors. No one could explain why soldiers wearing the armor walked out of battles they had no business surviving. Plasma bolts veered off at odd angles. High-frequency blades dulled on contact. Even kinetic bombardments, when they struck, left the operator bruised but breathing. Official reports credited improvised deflection fields and multi-angled composite layering. Off the record, most of the troops swore the armor was cursed, or blessed, depending who you asked. Arden didn't believe in curses. He believed in numbers, and the numbers were bad. Humanity had clawed its way into the galactic community only to find itself surrounded by civilizations centuries ahead in weaponry. Every war game ended the same. Humans dead, their ships shattered, their colonies burned. The armor, ridiculous as it looked, was a last-ditch gamble. Arden understood the desperation. He just wished he hadn't been chosen as its guinea pig. The summons to deployment came sooner than he expected. A raiding fleet of the Draxel, a reptilian species famed for their precision strikes, had landed on the desert world of Vela to seize its refineries. The local defense grid was already down. Command scrambled a response unit, small and under-equipped, with Arden in the center of it, lugging his clunky armor up the transport ramp while the others tried not to laugh too loudly. Inside the dropship, the air stank of fear masked by bravado. Troopers checked magazines, flexed gauntlets, muttered prayers to distant deities. Arden sat rigid, the armor weighing on him like a coffin, the hydraulics hissing each time he shifted. Across from him, Private Ryan grinned. "Don't worry, Lieutenant. When they see you in that tin can, the lizards will die of laughter before they shoot." The cabin erupted in chuckles, though some sounded nervous. Arden managed a thin smile. The pilot's voice crackled overhead. "Approach vector set. Touchdown in 3 minutes. Heat signatures indicate heavy resistance." Arden closed his eyes and tried to remember the breathing exercises his instructors drilled into him. Inhale, steady exhale. The armor whined with every motion. He wondered if the enemy could already hear him from orbit. When the ramp lowered, the world outside blasted them with heat and sand. Plasma fire streaked through the air in luminous arcs. The troopers surged forward, scattering into cover, returning fire. Arden followed, the armor clanking and squeaking, every step a proclamation of his presence. Bullets hissed past. The sky roared with engines. Then the impossible happened. A Draxel warrior, armored in smooth obsidian plating, aimed a plasma rifle directly at Arden's chest and fired. He felt the impact like a hammer blow, stumbling backward. He braced for agony. None came. The plasma bolt sizzled against his armor and skittered off into the sand, leaving only a scorched mark. The Draxel's eyes widened in disbelief. Adrenaline surged. Arden raised his rifle and fired, the shot piercing the alien cleanly. Around him, soldiers shouted. Some cheered. It bounced off him. Ryan's voice rang, half laugh, half scream. The damn thing works. Word spread quickly on the field. Arden advanced, drawing enemy fire like a beacon. Plasma lanced toward him, each shot glancing off in improbable trajectories. He felt each strike rattle his bones, but he remained standing. The Draxel faltered, confusion evident in their ranks. A human in garbage armor was walking through their barrage as if invincible. At one point, Arden tripped on uneven rock, crashing forward. The weight of his armor carried him into a Draxel commander, crushing the alien beneath his bulk. Bones snapped. Soldiers nearby swore it looked deliberate. Arden scrambled up, dazed, and kept firing. To the troops behind him, it became legend in the making. A human Juggernaut bowling over the enemy. By the time the smoke cleared, the refinery was theirs again. Casualties were heavy, but Arden's survival, and the absurd effectiveness of his armor, overshadowed every loss. The soldiers carried him back to the dropship on their shoulders, chanting, laughing, exhilarated. Arden sat in stunned silence inside his helmet, wondering how much of it was skill, how much blind luck. News traveled faster than ships. Across the sector, whispers began. The Draxel, who prided themselves on precision, had been humiliated by a stumbling human wrapped in scrap metal. Their commanders convened emergency councils, dissecting every report, replaying every fragment of battlefield footage. Some claimed the armor housed hidden energy redirection fields. Others insisted it must be an experimental shield beyond current comprehension. A few muttered darker suspicions, that humans had tapped into unpredictable physics, a weapon of chaos. Meanwhile, Arden found himself at the center of an uncomfortable storm. Command hailed him as proof of Project Sentinel's success. Technicians swarmed his armor, cataloging every scorch mark and dent, trying to decode why it kept him alive. None could offer a definitive answer. Arden endured the attention with a soldier's patience, but inside he wrestled with doubt. He knew how close he'd been to dying. He knew he wasn't invincible. Yet soldiers looked at him, The news of Vela spread across the galaxy like a spark in dry brush. Arden had tried to return to anonymity, to blend into the ranks and let the madness of that first impossible victory fade, but the galaxy would not allow it. Draxel commanders, shamed before their allies, swore that humanity's so-called armor was a weapon of mass disruption that had to be erased before it destabilized the balance of power. Other species watched more cautiously, wary that the backward newcomers might have stumbled onto something unpredictable, something that could unravel centuries of carefully maintained dominance. And among the soldiers of Earth, Arden Kale became less a man and more a symbol, a figure whispered about in mess halls and painted crudely on dropship hulls. The dumb armor, ridiculous in appearance, had become humanity's banner. Arden himself hated every second of it. He wore the armor again and again in the weeks that followed, each deployment a blur of noise, light, and the crushing weight of expectation. He led charges he hadn't meant to lead, drew fire that should have killed him, and survived battles that by all rights should have left him buried beneath rubble. Sometimes he stumbled, sometimes he panicked, sometimes he nearly died, but always the armor carried him through, dented and scorched, yet whole. The soldiers around him began to fight differently, emboldened by his presence. When he moved forward, they followed. When he laughed in the face of incoming fire, they cheered. And when he fell, scrambling to rise again, they roared all the louder, convinced they were watching destiny itself unfold. It unsettled him deeply. Late at night, when the adrenaline faded and the barracks fell quiet, he would peel off the armor piece by piece, staring at the battered plates, the cracked seals, the scorch marks where plasma had struck and failed to kill him. He would run a hand over the crude welds and ask himself why. Why did this work? Why did the galaxy's most advanced weapons bend around him as though fate itself interfered? No answer ever came. The engineers mumbled about angles, about material composites, about the geometry of luck, but their words were flimsy things. Arden suspected that if he died tomorrow, if one bolt found its mark, the illusion would collapse. The galaxy would see the truth, that it had not been invincibility at all, but chance. But the galaxy did not see that, not yet. Instead, it watched with growing alarm as more humans donned the armor and returned from battles alive. Arden was no longer alone. Entire squads now wore the patchwork suits, each as ugly and clumsy as his own, and each operator seemed blessed with the same improbable luck. Aliens whispered of cursed metal, of probability fields warped by human stubbornness, of armor haunted by ancient ghosts. Rumors spread faster than reason. Some Draxel soldiers began to break ranks when they saw the glint of mismatched plating advancing through smoke. A few refused to fire at all, insisting that to kill one of these armored humans would doom their entire broodline. The Draxel leadership, humiliated and desperate, doubled down. They forged a coalition with rival species, pooling fleets and armies in a campaign designed not simply to defeat humanity but to annihilate it. They believed that if they threw enough firepower, enough bodies, into the crucible, the illusion would crack and the dumb armor would be revealed, as the farce it surely was. Arden's unit was sent to meet that tide on the fortress world of Brontis, a scarred sphere of mountains and trenches that had already devoured countless lives. When the dropships cut through Brontis' polluted skies, Arden felt the weight of destiny press against his chest harder than the armor ever could. Thousands of human soldiers descended beside him, many clad in the same grotesque prototypes, their movements jerky and ungainly, their hydraulics squeaking like rusted hinges. From orbit it must have looked comical compared to the sleek formations of alien exosuit. But on the ground, as artillery thundered and skies burned, that comedy became horror. Plasma bolts streaked into